They called it the moral cleanse, as if burning down a few bathhouses could wash away the sins of Europe. But beneath the ashes and the sermons, something far deadlier was spreading. Whispers spoke of a divine punishment, a disease born of lust and steam, a plague that didn't kill quickly. It humiliated first. This wasn't the Black Death. This was the Great Pox, the infection that turned pleasure into penance and Europe's pursuit of cleanliness into a century of fear. As the church declared war on filth, entire cities turned against their own senses. Soap was sin, warm water was temptation, and the bath, that ancient symbol of civilization, became the devil's playground. Welcome to the odd past. This is part 2 of the Medieval Bathhouse Scandal, when sin met syphilis, the moral cleanse. Chapter 9. The Great Pox, 1495. Soldiers bring syphilis from Italy. Panic spreads. It began quietly, as all pandemics do. In 1495, French soldiers returning from Naples brought home a new affliction. It caused painful ulcers, oozing sores, and madness. Doctors called it morbus gallicus, the French disease. The French naturally called it the Neapolitan disease. Everyone blamed someone else, and soon it had a new name, the Great Pox. We know it today as syphilis, and in the early 1500s it spread faster than gossip at a royal wedding. Within a decade, it had burned through every major city in Europe. Venice, Paris, London, Cologne, none were spared. Hospitals overflowed, and the favorite scapegoat, the bathhouse. Chapter 10. Banned and burned. Cities shut down bathhouses. Fire and superstition take over. For centuries, the bathhouse had been Europe's hub of pleasure and relief. Now it became the symbol of corruption, disease, and divine punishment. Doctors warned that the heat and steam opened the pores and let the infection crawl in. Preachers claimed it was God's wrath for lustful living, and people, terrified, stopped bathing. The irony was delicious. The very places built to keep people clean were now seen as fountains of filth. In 1496, Paris closed its bathhouses for the sickness of lechery. A few years later, London ordered the Southwark stews shut down. Nuremberg burned several to the ground to purify the air. It wasn't just fear, it was panic wrapped in piety. In one account, a Parisian doctor refused to treat patients who reeked of water. He believed bathing softened the flesh and weakened the soul. Instead, he prescribed dry rubbing with linen and towels, a medieval version of thoughts and prayers. The result: Europe began its long, stinking retreat from soap and water. Chapter 11. Faith over flesh. Church declares bathing sinful. Moral cleansing replaces hygiene. When syphilis arrived, the church saw an opportunity. This wasn't just a disease. It was proof of divine justice. Priests preached that the bathhouse is the serpent's den and the unwashed shall be saved. And for once, the people listened. Bathhouses, once symbols of sophistication, were shuttered, condemned, or turned into hospitals. The smell of perfume and wine gave way to the stench of rot and death. Still, not everyone gave up the habit. In the royal courts of France and Italy, private baths remained fashionable, but with a twist. Now they were hidden behind curtains, reserved for the elite, and justified as medical treatments. It was a transformation from public pleasure to private indulgence. Cleanliness was no longer communal. It was elite, secret, and dangerous. Chapter 12. Medicine without understanding. Doctors tried everything. Mercury ointments, bloodletting, herbal steams. None of it worked. One medieval physician wrote, "We must drive out the corruption with fire." And so they did. They burned clothes, bedding, and even the furniture of the infected. But the disease didn't care. Syphilis spread through soldiers, lovers, and, most ironically, through the physicians themselves. By 1510, the word bath was practically cursed. Even nobles refused to immerse themselves in hot water, preferring perfumes and powders to cover the smell. Bathhouses decayed. Wood rotted, windows shattered, and moss grew where laughter once echoed. The era of communal bathing, of warmth, indulgence, and sin was over. Europe was now a continent afraid of water, and it would stay that way for centuries. Chapter 13. Reformation and the War on Water. By the 16th century, Europe had washed its hands of washing, and religion was more than happy to keep it that way. The Protestant Reformation was sweeping across the continent, and with it came a new obsession with moral purity. Soap was replaced by sermons. Cleanliness was redefined, not as something you did with your body, but with your conscience. The Catholic Church had already condemned the bathhouse as a den of flesh. Now, Protestant reformers took it a step further. Martin Luther called public baths baths of shame. John Calvin warned that indulgence, even in hot water, led to temptation. Ironically, both sides agreed for once. Bathing was sinful. By 1600, public bathhouses were nearly extinct. In their place rose private wash basins, perfumes, and powders. Cleanliness became a quiet act. Something you did behind closed doors, sparingly, and with guilt. Chapter 14. Perfume, powder, and pretending. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the great bathhouses were gone, replaced by perfume bottles and lace handkerchiefs. Cleanliness had become cosmetic. In France, courtiers at Versailles powdered themselves white, dusted wigs with flour, and drenched their clothes in scent to mask the inevitable odor. Soap was out. Illusion was in. Louis XIV, the Sun King, reportedly took only 2 baths in his entire life, both under doctor's orders. He preferred to change his clothes frequently and be doused in rose water instead. The irony. The same king who ruled over gilded fountains wouldn't dare touch the water himself. Perfume became the new piety. If you smelled sweet, people assumed you were moral, refined, maybe even clean. A clever trick. You could smell like a garden while living like a garbage dump. Chapter 15. Cleanliness and class. Hygiene becomes a symbol of virtue. The poor labeled dirty. As centuries passed, cleanliness turned from luxury into a symbol of class. By the Enlightenment, clean meant civilized. The poor were dirty, not just physically, but morally. Doctors, philosophers, and even politicians began equating filth with sin, and cleanliness with intelligence, virtue, and superiority. Bathing, once condemned as lustful, was now rebranded as patriotic. In 18th century England, public health campaigns began promoting baths again, but not for pleasure. Now bathing was about discipline, not indulgence. It wasn't about sin anymore. It was about control. And yet, the old stigma lingered. Even as plumbing improved, people still whispered that too much washing was dangerous, that hot water weakened the blood, that soap corrupted the skin. Centuries after the last bathhouse burned, Europe was still haunted by the ghosts of steam and sin. Chapter 16. The dirt beneath the clean. Modern obsession with purity. Echo of medieval fear. Even today, the echoes of that moral panic remain. We still equate cleanliness with virtue, even subconsciously. We talk about clean eating, clean living, clean records, as if being pure has anything to do with soap. And just like the bathhouses of old, public hygiene is still tied to class. The wealthy can afford luxury spa retreats. The poor are often blamed for their filth. We pretend we've evolved, but the same cultural wiring remains. The body, especially when exposed, still carries shame. Desire is still dressed up as sin. And the bathhouse, that perfect fusion of cleanliness and temptation, has never really died. It just got rebranded. The modern spa, the gym shower, the wellness retreat, they're all echoes of the same human contradiction. The desperate need to be clean and the irresistible urge to get dirty again. So, what did the medieval bathhouse really teach us? That civilization isn't defined by plumbing or perfume. It's defined by how we handle our own nature. The bathhouse started as a place of purity, became a place of pleasure, and died as a place of shame. But in the end, it was always about the same thing: being human. Because for all our progress, for all our hygiene and hand sanitizer, we still wrestle with the same filth, not on our skin, but in our morals, our fears, our contradictions. The story of the bathhouse isn't just about water. It's about how society turns something natural into something forbidden, and then spends centuries trying to cleanse the guilt away. So next time you light a candle and sink into your bathtub, just remember, you're taking part in a ritual that once shook kingdoms, ruined reputations, and terrified the church. You're not just washing, you're participating in one of history's most scandalous acts of self-care. And that is the strange, steamy, and sinful history of the medieval bathhouse, where Europe tried to get clean and almost scrubbed itself out of existence. If you've enjoyed this dive into the dirtier side of history, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to The Odd Past for more tales where truth is stranger and filthier than fiction. Turn on post notifications and stay tuned for next week's video, where we dive into the strange sleeping habits of medieval Europe. Thanks for watching.